thought this was just another bridge. After hearing about this project for years, when the news finally broke that it was actually moving forward, I had the same reaction everyone else did. Well, it's about time. Finally, maybe we'll stop sitting in traffic every time we drive through Mobile. But then I started digging deeper. I read the reports. I looked at the maps. I went back through the history of this project. And the more I learned, the more I realized something just didn't add up. There was one detail that almost nobody seemed to be talking about. A detail that completely changed the way I look at this bridge. By the time I finished my research, I had a theory. Now, I'm not saying it's the official reason this bridge is being built, but after connecting all the pieces together, I honestly can't look at this project the same way anymore. But before we get started, if you enjoy learning about the massive projects shaping Alabama, the infrastructure changing our state, and the stories most people never hear, make sure to subscribe to the channel. Now, let's go back to where this story really began. If you've lived in Alabama for any length of time, chances are you've been stuck right here. Maybe on your way to work, maybe heading to Gulf Shores for the weekend, or maybe just trying to get home after a long day. For decades, crossing Mobile Bay has been one of the biggest headaches in our state. The George Wallace Tunnel opened back in 1973. At the time, it did exactly what it was built to do. But Alabama didn't stop growing. The Port of Mobile kept expanding. More people moved into the area. Tourism along the Gulf Coast exploded. And every year, more trucks began using Interstate 10 as one of the country's most important east-west freight corridors. Eventually, the tunnel reached its limit. Today, it doesn't take much. One minor accident, a few minutes of heavy rain, or simply the afternoon rush hour, and traffic can back up for miles in both directions. For many Alabamians, that's just become part of everyday life, which is exactly why people have been talking about building another crossing for decades. But talking about it turned out to be much easier than actually building it. Historic renderings, old news footage, project graphics. Over the years, several different plans were proposed. The design changed. The route changed. The budget kept growing. The funding plan changed. And every time it looked like construction was finally about to begin, something got in the way. The costs went up. The tolls became controversial. Federal funding took longer than expected. And once again, the project was pushed back. After so many delays, a lot of people simply stopped believing this bridge would ever become reality. Till now. Current news footage, new bridge renderings. This year, everything changed. State officials unveiled a completely new plan. Instead of replacing both the bridge and the bayway at the same time, they'll build the bridge first and leave the bayway expansion for a future phase. The funding strategy was reworked. Federal support moved forward. Construction is now expected to begin later this year. And if everything stays on schedule, drivers could be crossing this bridge by 2031. After decades of waiting, Alabama's biggest infrastructure project finally seems to be moving forward. But here's what caught my attention. The more I looked into this new design, the more I realized that there was one detail almost nobody was talking about. And that detail is where this story really begins. That's when I decided to stop looking at this project as just another bridge. Instead, I started looking at how it was designed. Not the budget, not the tolls, not the political debates, the engineering itself. Because every major infrastructure project is built to solve a specific problem. And once I realized that, I started asking a different question. What problem was this bridge really designed to solve? The answer wasn't obvious. At first glance, it's just an impressive-looking cable-stayed bridge. Beautiful, modern, exactly what you'd expect from a project of this size. But then I came across one number. Just one number. It wasn't hidden. In fact, it's been sitting in the project documents this whole time. Yet almost nobody seems to be talking about it. 215 feet. That's it. Just a number. At least, that's what I thought. Until I realized what 215 feet actually means. And trust me, once you understand that number, you start looking at this entire project very differently. 215 feet, or about 65 meters. At first, that number didn't mean much to me. But then I tried to picture it. That's roughly the height of a 20-story building. standing over the water. That's the amount of clearance this bridge will provide. And it wasn't designed that way by accident. It was built that high for a reason. To allow some of the largest vessels operating along the Gulf Coast to pass underneath without restriction. Footage of a cruise ship. Modern cruise ships. Footage of a container ship. Massive container ships carrying thousands of shipping containers. Footage of a ro-ro vessel unloading vehicles. Ro-ro cargo ships transporting thousands of cars and heavy equipment. Footage of a US Navy vessel. And even large US Navy vessels that regularly operate along America's Gulf Coast. Every one of them can pass beneath this bridge. That's when something clicked. Almost every news story about this project focuses on one thing: traffic. And don't get me wrong, reducing congestion is a huge reason this bridge is being built. Anyone who's driven through the Wallace Tunnel knows that. But when you stop looking at the highway and start looking at the river, you begin to realize there's another story unfolding here. The Mobile River isn't just a river. It's one of Alabama's most important economic lifelines. Every single day, ships arrive carrying products from around the world. Others leave loaded with steel, lumber, coal, chemicals, automobiles, and countless other goods produced across the region. And year after year, that traffic continues to grow. Which led me to another question. If this bridge was designed to accommodate ships of this size, what exactly is happening at the Port of Mobile that requires this much capacity? If you're from Alabama, you already know most of these places. The Port of Mobile, the cargo terminals, the shipyards, the industrial areas. They're all part of the landscape around here. Nothing surprising about that. But among all those places, one stood out to me. Austal USA. Maybe you've driven past it dozens of times without giving it much thought. I know I have. But this time I decided to find out exactly what happens behind those gates. And that's when this story became even more interesting. Most people never think about footage of Austal USA, ships under construction, cranes, workers, and the shipyard from the air. At first glance, Austal just looks like another shipyard. But it's anything but ordinary. Today, it's one of the most important naval shipbuilders in the United States. This is where ships are built for the US Coast Guard, where vessels are built for the US Navy, and more recently, where massive steel modules are being manufactured for the Navy's Virginia-class and Columbia-class submarines. That's when I went back to the map. I looked at the future bridge. Then I looked at the Port of Mobile. Then I looked back at Austal. And I couldn't help but start connecting the dots. Alabama truly needs this bridge. Interstate 10 has been overwhelmed for years. The Wallace Tunnel simply can't handle the traffic anymore. And there's no question this new crossing will make life easier for thousands of people. Nobody argues with that. But the deeper I dug, the more I felt like there was another layer to this story. Because when you start connecting the dots, the Port of Mobile continuing to expand, billions of dollars being invested across the region, shipping channels being upgraded to handle larger vessels, Interstate 10 serving as one of America's most important freight corridors. A bridge designed with enough clearance for virtually any ship using this waterway. And just minutes away, one of the nation's most important shipyards building vessels for the US Navy and manufacturing modules for some of the most advanced submarines in the world. At least to me, it's hard to look at all of those things and believe they're completely unrelated. Now, does that mean this bridge is being built because of Austal? No. Does it mean there's some secret military project behind all of this? Absolutely not, and I wouldn't make that claim. But I do think there's a question worth asking. Is this bridge being built simply to solve today's traffic? Or is it also preparing Alabama for what this region will become over the next 20, 30, or even 50 years? Because history has taught us something. The biggest infrastructure projects are almost never built just for today's problems. They're built for tomorrow's opportunities. And maybe, years from now, we'll look back at this bridge and realize it was never just about traffic. Maybe it marked the beginning of a much bigger transformation for Alabama. Now I'd love to hear what you think. If you've lived in Alabama your whole life, if you work at the Port of Mobile, if you've worked at Austal, or if you've simply driven this stretch of I-10 more times than you can count. What's your take? Do you think this project is only about reducing traffic? Or do you believe something bigger is happening here? Leave your thoughts in the comments. I read every single one of them. And who knows? Maybe someone watching this video knows something that the rest of us have completely overlooked. I'll see you in the next one.